Caroline Levitt was reviewing her notes for the press briefing when she felt a bony hand grip her shoulder. She turned to find Nancy Pelosi, eyes blazing with fury, standing inches from her face. "We need to talk about what you said about me yesterday," Pelosi growled. The security cameras captured every word that followed. February 14, 2025. Valentine's Day in Washington, D.C. But there was no love in the air at the Capitol building. The marble halls echoed with the usual symphony of democracy, hurried footsteps, whispered negotiations, the distant ring of phones. Caroline Levitt, at 27 the youngest White House press secretary in history, stood alone in a third-floor corridor of the Rayburn building, scrolling through her notes on her phone. The 10 a.m. briefing would be crucial. President Trump's new tax reform package was facing fierce Democratic opposition, and Caroline had prepared some particularly pointed remarks about the opposition's hypocrisy. Yesterday on Fox News with Sean Hannity, she'd called Nancy Pelosi the embodiment of corrupt California elite and raised questions about suspicious stock trades that had made the Pelosi family millions over the decades. The clip had gone viral. Fake corrupt Nancy was trending. Conservative Twitter was on fire with memes of Pelosi clutching money bags. Caroline knew there would be backlash, but she was ready. Or so she thought. The sharp click of heels on marble cut through her concentration. She didn't look up, probably another staffer rushing to a meeting, but the footsteps stopped, right behind her. Then the hand landed on her shoulder, bony, cold, gripping with surprising strength. Caroline turned and found herself face to face with Nancy Patricia Pelosi herself. The 84-year-old former Speaker of the House stood there in a purple Armani suit that probably cost more than most Americans made in a month. Her hair was perfectly coiffed, her makeup flawless despite the early hour. But her face, usually masked with political courtesy, was twisted with raw fury. "We need to talk," Pelosi said, her voice like ice cracking. Caroline calmly slipped her phone into her blazer pocket. Inside, she was smiling. She'd been expecting this. "Mrs. Pelosi," she said pleasantly. "How can I help you? How can you help me?" Pelosi's voice dripped with condescension. "I know what you said on Fox last night. Corrupt elite, insider trading, you little..." She paused, visibly struggling to maintain composure. "Did I say something inaccurate?" Caroline asked, her voice innocent but her eyes sharp. At 5'4", she was a full 6 inches shorter than Pelosi, but she didn't step back. Pelosi's perfectly Botoxed face attempted a scowl. "Listen to me, little girl. I was walking these halls before you were even born. I've seen Trump sycophants like you come and go. But I'm still here." "Yes, you are still here," Caroline replied smoothly. "And your stock portfolio has grown quite impressively during your tenure, hasn't it? Funny how you always seem to make the right trades just before major congressional votes." Pelosi's grip on Caroline's shoulder tightened painfully. "Are you threatening me?" "Threatening?" Caroline laughed, a light, tinkling sound that seemed to infuriate Pelosi more. "No, Mrs. Pelosi. I'm just stating facts that everyone already knows. The Visa stock in 2008, the Tesla calls in 2020, the NVIDIA positions in 2024. My husband is a traitor," Pelosi hissed. "Everything is perfectly legal." "Legal but not ethical," Caroline countered. "And the American people know the difference." That's when Nancy Pelosi, after 5 decades in politics, finally lost control. She shoved Caroline against the wall, her age-spotted hands pressing the younger woman's shoulders. "You little..." Pelosi searched for the word, her face contorting. "MAGA bitch." Caroline didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled wider. "Did you know you're being recorded?" Pelosi's eyes went wide. Caroline nodded toward the security camera in the corner of the corridor, its red light blinking steadily. "And that's not all," Caroline continued, pulling out her phone with her free hand. "I'm actually live streaming this. About 50,000 people on Instagram are watching us right now." Pelosi looked at the phone screen in horror. It was true, the live stream was active, and comments were flooding in at lightning speed. "Shoo. Dan, the color drained from the elderly politician's face. She released Caroline, but it was too late. "Hello, America," Caroline said, turning to address her phone camera directly. "As you can see, Mrs. Pelosi is having a cordial discussion with me. She just called me a MAGA bitch and physically shoved me against a wall. This is the true face of the Democrat Party, violence when they can't win with words. Turn that off." Pelosi shrieked, lunging for the phone. Caroline deftly stepped aside, keeping the phone out of reach. "I don't think so." The American people deserve to see the real Nancy Pelosi. The one behind the mask, behind the designer suits and plastic surgery. Pelosi spun around frantically. At the end of the corridor, several people had appeared, congressional staffers, maybe a reporter or two. All had their phones out recording. You, Pelosi's voice shook. You planned this, planned. Caroline affected an innocent expression. I was just walking to my meeting. You're the one who stopped me, insulted me, and assaulted me. I'm simply protecting myself.
You set me up. No.
Caroline said, her voice hardening. You set yourself up. You've walked these halls for 50 years thinking you're untouchable, that you can do whatever you want without consequences. But times have changed, Mrs. Pelosi. Everyone's watching now. The viewer count on the live stream had passed 100,000. Comments were scrolling so fast they were unreadable. Caroline noticed several blue check marks. Verified accounts of major media personalities and politicians were watching. Pelosi took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. But the damage was done. This is fabricated. You provoked me. Fabricated. Caroline moved the phone closer. Then explained to America why a member of Congress would physically assault the White House press secretary. Why would you call me a bitch? Is this how Democrats handle disagreement now? Violence. You didn't mean to call me a MAGA bitch. Caroline raised an eyebrow. How exactly did you mean it then? Pelosi's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. For the first time in her political career, she was completely speechless. And while we're at it, Caroline continued, let's talk about those stock trades. In 2008, your husband bought $5 million in Visa stock one day before their IPO. During the pandemic, right after a classified congressional briefing you purchased. Pelosi screamed. Her voice echoed off the marble walls. You know nothing! Nothing about how this city works, how power works. I'll destroy you. Caroline's smile widened. You just threatened me in front of 150,000 viewers. Please, continue. Pelosi finally seemed to grasp the magnitude of her mistake. She looked around wildly, cameras everywhere. A CNN reporter was jogging toward them. Capitol Police were approaching. This isn't over, Pelosi whispered. No, it's not, Caroline agreed. In fact, it's just beginning. This afternoon at the press briefing, I'll be revealing a comprehensive report on your and your husband's suspicious trades over the past 50 years. Every transaction, every coincidence, every profit. You wouldn't dare. Watch me, Caroline said. She turned back to the camera. America, tune in at 2 p.m. for the White House press briefing. I'll be exposing Nancy Pelosi's secrets. All of them. You won't want to miss this. She ended the live stream. Pelosi stood there, face ashen, hands trembling with rage or fear or both. Why? The old woman whispered. Why are you doing this? Caroline looked at her, for the first time with genuine seriousness. Because America deserves better. You've enriched yourself for 50 years while regular Americans struggle. You've perverted public service into personal profit. Someone needs to say enough. Who are you to lecture me? Pelosi found one last spark of defiance. I've served this country since before you were born. I'm Caroline Levitt, the young woman said proudly. I'm 27 years old. And unlike you, I'm here to serve America, not my stock portfolio. The CNN reporter reached them, breathless.
Mrs. Pelosi! Ms. Levitt!
Can you comment on what just happened? Pelosi looked at the reporter, then at Caroline, then at the multiple cameras now surrounding them. Without a word, she turned and walked away as fast as her 84-year-old legs could carry her, heels clicking frantically on the marble. Caroline turned to the reporter. Come to the 2 p.m. briefing. I'll answer all your questions then. By noon, the video was everywhere. Pelosi assault was the #1 trending topic worldwide. The footage, both from Caroline's live stream and from multiple angles captured by bystanders, was being played on every news network. CNN tried to spin it as a heated exchange, while Fox News ran it with a Karen Pelosi a tercikashram pprsccr. But it was the raw, unedited footage that truly went viral. Pelosi shoving Caroline against the wall. The MAGA bitch slur. The threats. The attempt to grab the phone. It was political suicide captured in 4K. Nancy Pelosi's office released a hasty statement. Later, Pelosi regrets the unfortunate incident this morning. She was provoked by false accusations and reacted emotionally. She apologizes for her choice of words. But the apology only made things worse. By admitting it happened, Pelosi confirmed what millions had already seen. The hashtag MAGABitch started trending, with Trump supporters proudly adopting it. T-shirts were already being designed. At 1:45 p.m., Caroline stood in the West Wing, making final preparations. President Trump burst in, grinning from ear to ear.
Caroline, fantastic work! You got her good!
Thank you, Mr. President. But this is just the beginning. What do you have planned? Caroline held up a thick folder. 50 years of suspicious trades. Every time Pelosi or her husband made a fortune right before congressional action. The Visa IPO, the Microsoft split, the healthcare stocks before Obamacare, the tech stocks before regulation votes. All of it. Trump's eyes gleamed. This is why you're the best. Destroy her. At 2 p.m. sharp, Caroline walked into the James S. Brady press briefing room. Every seat was filled. Cameras from every major network were rolling. The energy was electric. Good afternoon. Caroline began, her voice calm and professional. Before we begin, I want to address this morning's incident. Nancy Pelosi physically assaulted me, used a sexist slur, and threatened to destroy me. Why? Because I spoke the truth about her corrupt practices. She clicked a button, and a presentation appeared on the screens behind her. Let's start with 2008. One day before the Visa IPO, Paul Pelosi purchased $5 million in stock. The next day that stock increased in value by 50%. Coincidence? Let's see the pattern. For the next 45 minutes, Caroline methodically went through trade after trade. The room was silent except for the clicking of cameras and the scratching of pens on notepads. In March 2020, after a classified briefing on COVID-19, the Pelosis sold millions in hotel and resort stocks while purchasing Amazon, Netflix, and Zoom. They made $30 million while Americans were losing their jobs. A reporter raised his hand. Ms. Levitt, are you alleging insider trading? I'm presenting facts, Caroline replied. The American people can draw their own conclusions. But ask yourself, how does a public servant on a $200,000 salary accumulate a net worth of over $200 million? Another reporter. What about the assault this morning? Caroline touched her shoulder where Pelosi had grabbed her. An 84-year-old woman attacked me and called me a MAGA bitch because I exposed her corruption. This is what the Democrat establishment does when threatened. They resort to violence and slurs. Will you press charges? I'm considering all options, Caroline said. But the court of public opinion has already rendered its verdict. The briefing continued for another hour. Caroline presented document after document, trade after trade, pattern after pattern. By the end, even the skeptical reporters looked stunned. That evening, cable news was in overdrive. On Fox, Tucker Carlson played the assault video on loop. This is the real Nancy Pelosi, he said. Behind the grandmotherly act is a vicious, corrupt politician who will do anything to protect her ill-gotten gains. On MSNBC, they tried damage control. While Pelosi's actions were regrettable, we must remember that Caroline Levitt provoked this confrontation. Rachel Maddow argued, but even her loyal viewers weren't buying it. The video was too damning. On social media, the memes exploded. Pelosi's face, twisted in rage, became the new shocked Pikachu. "Ega bitch" was photoshopped onto everything from coffee mugs to billboards. Remixes of the confrontation set to music went viral on TikTok. But perhaps the most damaging development came from within Pelosi's own party. Young progressive Democrats, who had long resented Pelosi's iron grip on power, saw an opportunity. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, "Violence is never acceptable regardless of political affiliation. We must hold our leaders to a higher standard." Ilhan Omar added, "The stock trading allegations are deeply concerning. No one is above ethics rules." Even Chuck Schumer distanced himself. "I was troubled by what I saw in that video. This is not who we are as Democrats." By 10 p.m., calls for Pelosi's resignation were growing. The House Ethics Committee announced an emergency meeting. The SEC indicated they were reviewing the stock trading allegations. In her Pacific Heights mansion, Nancy Pelosi sat in her study, watching her career implode on multiple screens. Her husband Paul sat nearby, his own phone buzzing constantly with calls from lawyers and financial advisors. "How did this happen?" she muttered. "That little girl, she ruined everything." "You lost control," Paul said quietly. "You let her bait you." "She planned it all," Nancy insisted. "The camera angles, the live stream. Haven't all those documents ready?" "Of course she planned it," Paul replied. "And you walked right into it. 50 years in politics and you forgot the first rule. Never lose your temper on camera." 3 days later, the pressure had become unbearable. Major Democratic donors were pulling support. Her own caucus was in open revolt. The Ethics Committee had launched a formal investigation. The MAGA BTCH hashtag showed no signs of dying down. On February 17, Nancy Pelosi held a press conference. After 5 decades of service to my country, I have decided to resign from Congress effective immediately. She read from prepared remarks, her voice shaking. I apologize for my actions earlier this week. They do not represent the values I have tried to uphold throughout my career. She took no questions, shuffling off the stage as reporters shouted after her. At the White House, Caroline Levitt watched the resignation on TV with President Trump and senior staff. "You did it," Trump said admiringly. "You took down Nancy Pelosi. Nobody else could do it." "But you did. She took herself down," Caroline replied. "I just made sure America saw it happen." "What's next?" Trump asked. "Who else is on your list?" Caroline smiled. "I have a few ideas. Schumer's been making some interesting trades lately. And don't get me started on Maxine Waters." Trump laughed. "That's my girl. Clean them all out." A week later, Caroline was walking through the same corridor where the confrontation had occurred. The spot had become something of a tourist attraction. Staffers and visitors often stopped to take selfies where it happened. As she passed the security camera that had captured it all, Caroline paused. She looked directly at it and gave a small salute. That camera had been her silent witness, her insurance policy. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think you won. This isn't over." NP. Caroline screenshotted the message and forwarded it to her lawyer. Then she typed back, "It is for you." The aftermath rippled through Washington for months. The Pelosi rules were enacted, requiring more transparent disclosure of congressional stock trades. Several other long-serving members quietly announced retirements rather than face similar scrutiny. Caroline Levitt became a conservative icon. At 27, she had done what countless Republicans had tried and failed to do. She had brought down Nancy Pelosi. Not through legislation or elections, but by simply letting America see who Pelosi really was when the mask slipped. The security footage became legendary. It was studied in political science classes as an example of how modern politics had changed. In the age of smartphones and social media, every moment was potentially public. Every outburst could end a career. But perhaps the most lasting impact was on young conservative women. Caroline had shown them that they didn't have to accept abuse from the establishment. They could fight back, smart and strategic. 6 months later, Caroline published a book, The Shoulder Grab: How I Exposed Washington's Corruption. It became an instant bestseller. The dedication read, "To every young woman who's been called a bitch for speaking truth to power. Wear it as a badge of honor." Nancy Pelosi never returned to Washington. She spent her remaining years in California, her fortune intact but her legacy forever tarnished by one moment of lost control. The woman who had been the most powerful Democrat in America, brought down by a AG bitch, less than half her age. And it all started with a bony hand on a shoulder and the words, "We need to talk." The security cameras in the Rayburn building still record every day, silent witnesses to the dramas of democracy. But none have captured a moment quite like that Valentine's Day morning when Caroline Levitt looked Nancy Pelosi in the eye and refused to back down. In politics, as in life, it's not about the size of the fighter. It's about the size of the fight in them. And on that day, a 27-year-old press secretary had more fight than anyone expected. The marble corridors of power had seen many confrontations over the centuries, but few had been so decisive, so final, so perfectly captured for posterity. Caroline Levitt had turned Nancy Pelosi's greatest strength, her intimidating presence, into her ultimate weakness. And all of America had watched it happen, live and in living color.